Hey everyone, welcome to week 3. A few management things here before we get started. Um, Please make sure that you are proofreading and spell checking your discussion posts. It's been a little discouraging the last couple of weeks to read some of your discussion posts and also your comments that either have misspelled words or just incorrect word usage. So a lot of the communication in online learning is written communication. A lot of the communication that you're going to have if you continue down the path of being an educator or a teacher is going to be written communication. So I I'm having a hard time if you're misspelling words or if you're using incorrect words. I'm very nervous because you cannot misspell words in front of students. You cannot misspell words in your emails and your letters home to parents or to other professionals that you're working with in your school, to your administrators. It's just not acceptable. So please make sure that you're proofreading everything that you're posting and writing to someone. Make sure that your spelling's correct. If you struggle with that, please make sure that you're figuring out a strategy to take care of it, having someone else proofread it for you, reading it aloud to yourself. But please take care of that. I'm going to start grading your discussion posts starting this week. I haven't the last couple of weeks because I've been a little frustrated with the misspellings or the incorrect word usage or incorrect verb usage in some of your posts. So I'm not going to take off points for that, but I am going to continue to bring it up, and I'll bring it up on an individual basis from here on out if it continues to be an issue. But the grading that I'm going to do in this course is based on the thorough analysis and learning that you show each week. So discussion posts have been okay so far. I am evaluating them based on your thoroughness of learning and how you're responding to the questions and the learning that you're taking from the textbook and from the videos that I am asking you to watch, and how you're explaining that and really reflecting and thinking about your preparation in being a teacher. So that's all I have for that. I hope I don't have to address it again, but it is really, really important that you know that your written communication has a big impression on others. And if you misspell a word or use something incorrectly in an email to a parent, instantly that's a first impression that's not one that you want to have. Um, Another piece of management is your observation hours that are for the 1 credit. It's a pass-fail course, but you have to have 15 hours of observation. So last week I asked you to list your name, the teachers and grade level, and your blog address. You only need to have one blog address. You don't have to blog on 2 blogs for each classroom. So I asked you to observe in 2 different classrooms. You're going to reflect on all your observations, not separately. So you need to put the two of them together as far as what I'm learning about becoming a teacher from what I'm observing. So if you have two, and obviously Brianna, I'm missing yours, so please make sure that you get this done. I will be checking these. So I'm asking you to reflect weekly. So if you choose to do 5 hours of observation in 1 week, then I'm expecting to see a pretty lengthy and thorough reflection on your blog, explaining all the things that you've learned from being in that classroom. I don't want a summary of what you saw. I want you to reflect, which means you're analyzing what you saw and then processing it and reflecting within your own mind, which is where I'm going to ask you to write about it. What did you see here from the teacher? What did you see and hear from the students? What are things that you definitely saw as effective, so you want to take them into your classroom? Did you see any non-examples of things that you want to make sure you don't do because it was bad? You might see some of those things. You might be witnessing some of those things as a student right now. So each week, I'm asking you to blog on your observation hours. So I'm expecting you to observe at least once every week. So I should see a reflection post on your blog every week about what you are learning from being in a classroom. So Brianna, I'll be checking your blog as soon as you get that blog address to me. Haley and Madeline, just pick one of these, get rid of the other one. And pick one of these and then just leave the one that you're going to use on this page, because this is how I will get to your blogs and read them. If you have any questions on the observation part, please let me know. Okay, let's jump into this week's learning, which is addressing learners' individual needs. Um, this connects to last week's learning as far as the types of students that we're going to have in our classrooms. Um, I make sure that you go back if you haven't, or if you don't receive notifications when I comment on your posts. Please go back and read those. There's a lot in this chapter that talks about not making excuses for kids, not making excuses for yourself. It's not okay to be a teacher of a classroom and say, well, that kid's not going to learn because of such and such, or this kid isn't going to learn because of such and such. It's just not acceptable. If you're going to be in the education field, you have to thoroughly believe in growth mindset. You have to believe in brain plasticity. You have to believe that you can have a positive impact on every single student in your classroom. Some of you also talked about inequity issues that you've witnessed as a student. Those certainly are things that I hope you never do to students. If you do those things to students, you're definitely ineffective. And as you know, students pick up on that. So your goal within this course is to learn how to be an effective teacher, to learn all the ins and outs of being an effective teacher, so that you can make the decision after this course if education is truly something that you want to pursue or not. So addressing learners' individual needs is all about, so we have these 20 kids in our classroom. How do we meet their needs? How do we make sure that each student is growing? And one of those ideas is around growth mindset. So I want you to watch these two videos. You can watch them, I would watch them before you read in your text, but Carol Dweck is the main researcher behind growth mindset. And it references that in the book about brain plasticity as well. So please make sure that you pay special attention to that. That's on page 80. So the brain does have plasticity. Everyone can learn, which is a new revelation within the last decade or so, couple decades of research, that it doesn't matter where you come from, what background, that everyone can learn. And so that's something that to be an effective teacher, you have to believe in that, and you have to have those practices within your classroom of redos that aren't penalized or graded, of reassessments where students are showing you that they're learning. Another big piece this week is about multiple intelligences. So again, when you have these between 20 and 28 students in your classroom, you're going to have multiple intelligences. Howard Gardner has a lot of research around multiple intelligences, and this week I'm going to ask you to reflect on your own intelligences as a person, as a teacher and a student, which is something that you're going to need to know. How do you learn? And then if you learn in those ways, it might be easier for you to meet those intelligences within your classroom, but how do you meet the students' intelligences that maybe aren't yours? That's something that you have to think about as a teacher. How are you meeting all of your students' needs? They're all different, they're all unique, they're all exceptional. How do you meet their needs and how do you help them to grow? A couple of big pieces from this chapter that I want to share with you. Thinking about student learning in terms of how each student is unique or exceptional is essential to becoming an exceptional educator. My goal for you is that if you choose to continue down this path of being a teacher, that in the next 6 or 7 years, you are an exceptional teacher. You're doing things that are on the path of helping you to be exceptional. This chapter in this book is one of the most important. So I hope that you're taking notes. I hope that you're taking notes in a notebook or somewhere online that you can keep beyond high school so that it's not in your high school account, because then you'll lose it after you graduate. We do in this course write a final paper, and all of your notes each week will be really important, especially from the textbook, what you hear me saying, which might or might not be in the textbook. It might be things that I add in from my experiences and my learning. But please make sure that you're taking notes. There's a lot of really great things in this chapter that would be wonderful to take into your classroom someday. We talked about growth mindset. The human brain development is a big section of this chapter. Brain plasticity, growth mindset. I don't know how many of you are familiar or not with growth mindset, but it's a really interesting idea and something that you'll continue to learn about. Same thing with multiple intelligences. When you have to take your educational psychology course, if you continue on your teacher prep program, you'll have to take educational psychology and you'll learn more about multiple intelligences. A couple other things I want to share with you from this chapter. Oh, one thing that is also addressed in this chapter is a safe and caring classroom environment, and the relationships that you build with all your students truly makes a difference. Again, students don't care what you know until they know how much you care. One of the best things that I did in my classroom was to write positive notes. So every Friday I would pick a couple students, 2 or 3, and I would handwrite a note, and I would put it in an envelope. I would write their name on the outside, and then I would hand it to the student. I taught 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, remember. And so I would write their name on the outside and I would hand it to them. And I would say, please take this home. And some of them would look at me like in horror, please don't make me take something home. Is this something bad? All I ever get sent home is bad things. And I would tell them, you can read it. And they would read it and they would light up. And so then they would take it home and the parents would email or call me and thank me for doing that. So those positive interactions that you have with students, recognizing things that they do, possibly not academically. Maybe it's they're always really polite, or they have a great sense of humor. Whatever that might be, recognizing that and sharing that with them and sharing it with their parents was a great strategy that I used in my classroom to build those relationships in that safe and caring learning environment. On page 84, there's a great activity for using your intelligences to develop an instructional match. So that would be something that would be great for your own reflection. I don't know if any of you are planning on getting your special education endorsement. So you pick, you're either going to be elementary K-6 or you're going to be secondary 7-12. That's how the licensure works. And so you'll go in as L-Ed or secondary ed. And then you have the option to get your special education endorsement. I don't know if I would be interested to know if any of you are planning on doing that or maybe thinking about that. But there's a lot of information here starting on page 86 about students with disabilities and inclusion, or the relationship between special education teachers and general education teachers. So some new learning for you in that section. The Teacher's Lounge on page 89 truly talks about the perseverance of teachers and the work of amazing teachers and how impactful that is for students. Let's see what else I wanted to share with you. Talks about the excuses. One of my favorite quotes from this chapter is, in other words, while learning about some of these commonly used categories, you need to be mindful of not using them as excuses for why some students are not learning. So last week we talked about low-income students. There is no excuse for those students not to learn, and they definitely cannot be stereotyped into groups of not wanting to learn or not being motivated to learn. That's not okay. So we've got to shift our mindset in that thinking. The last section that I want to talk to you about is vocabulary development. Vocabulary instruction within any classroom is crucial. Students' vocabulary doubles between grades 3 and 7. Doubles. So if you're teaching 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th grade and you don't have vocabulary instruction within your classroom, you're hindering your students. Even below and above that, students are learning words all the time, but it has to come from their teacher. You have to direct instruct, which means you have to teach them the words and the definitions. I don't know if you've had to write words and definitions out of the back of a book. It's completely ineffective. The brain does not learn words like that. So please don't use that in your classroom, even though you might experience it as students. And there's going to be things like that that you might experience as students that I never want you to do in the classroom. Trying to find the quote where it talks about that. It's really, really good. And you might come across it. And I might add it in here. But it's talking about how when you stand up in front of a class of students and they just sit there and listen to you, it's very ineffective. And some of you might be experiencing that as well. Please don't do that to your students. Get them involved, help them to be creative, help them to be problem solvers, help them to have some progressive struggle within your classroom. If you have any questions about this week's learning, please let me know. Again, big ideas around growth mindset and Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences. You get to choose 2 of these questions to respond to. Again, I'll be looking for your thorough responses in your analysis of your learning and your reflection of your learning. Make sure you take care of your blogs. Start your observation hours. There's 7 hours due by spring break. You need to respond to 2 of these questions by Thursday, and then respond to 1 other classmate's by Sunday. Have a great week. Let me know if you need anything.